When two souls who have been locked in a dance of longing, fear, pursuit, and retreat suddenly fall into silence, something extraordinary happens. Not in the outer world, but in the inner world where the real story has always been unfolding. The moment both of you stop reaching out, the psyche begins to rearrange itself. The noise of emotional survival quiets down, and in that stillness, the deeper truths neither of you dared to look at, start rising from below the surface. The first shock is how quickly the silence becomes a mirror. For you, it exposes every wound you tried to soothe through connection. All the places where you believed love would calm your anxiety, validate your worth, or heal your fear of being abandoned become visible in a way they weren't before. Without the back and forth, without the hope of a message, without the tension of guessing, you start noticing what the relationship was trying to pull out of you: your forgotten power, your unmet needs, the child inside you who still believes they must earn love to keep it. For the avoidant, the silence functions like a psychological vacuum. As long as you reached out, they had a reason to guard themselves. As long as you pursued, they had something to escape from. But when your energy retracts, when your voice fades from their daily reality, the structure of their defenses starts to tremble. They are left alone with the one thing their detachment was built to protect them from: feeling the absence, feeling the loss, feeling the threat dissolve, and with it, the illusion that they never cared. What happens next is the part no one expects. When you stop contacting, your nervous system finally stops scanning for danger. A clarity begins to form. The emotional fog lifts. You begin to see patterns, not just theirs, but yours. You understand why you stayed, why you tried, why you held on even when you felt unseen. You recognize that this entire connection was not random, it was purposeful, pulling you toward a truth about yourself that you were meant to confront. And in that recognition, something inside you begins to strengthen. You grow in the very places where you once broke. Meanwhile, the avoidant feels a different kind of awakening. The silence that surrounds them isn't peaceful, it's intrusive. The emotional distance they created becomes too wide, too empty, too unfamiliar. They start remembering the moments they dismissed. They notice the warmth that is no longer there. They sense the shift in the energetic field between you, a shift you initiated not by pushing, but by stepping back into your own center. That shock for them is deeper than any confrontation you could have initiated with words. The most surprising part is this: when both of you stop contacting, the bond doesn't disappear. It transforms. It becomes clearer, more honest, less entangled with fear. You begin reclaiming your autonomy. They begin questioning their avoidance. You rise into self-awareness. They fall into introspection. And in that strange reversal, something unexpected happens. Your silence becomes the loudest message you ever sent. This is the turning point. Not the end, not the victory, not the loss. Just the moment destiny stops moving around you and begins moving through you. When two people who share a complicated emotional bond suddenly fall into silence, an invisible tension begins to weave itself between them, a tension that is far more potent than any argument, plea, or reconciliation could ever create. This tension is not just emotional, it is psychological, energetic, and deeply unconscious. When communication stops, the psyche is forced to shift from external stimulation to internal processing. All the noise, the confusion, the explanations, the attempts to fix things or hold things together dissolve, leaving only the raw inner material that had been avoided for so long. Silence becomes a container that holds everything unspoken, and because nothing is being expressed outwardly, the inner world amplifies. Thoughts become louder, sensations sharpen, and every emotion that was previously numbed or ignored begins to surface in ways that feel almost intrusive. This is the moment when you start noticing the subtleties of your own emotional landscape. You feel the ache of missing someone who once occupied a place in your daily life, yet the quiet also reveals how much of your identity became entangled with reaching out, checking in, or monitoring the emotional climate between you and the avoidant person. The tension of silence forces you to confront this tethering. You begin to see how much of your peace depended on their responses, their rhythms, or their attention. Without communication, the psyche flashes a light on the parts of you that still feel unsafe without external reassurance. The longing, the doubt, the fear of losing someone, the fear of being forgotten. These emotions rise not because the avoidant is gone, but because silence has stripped away all distractions, leaving you face to face with your own inner wounds. At the same time, the avoidant experiences a different dimension of this psychic tension. Their entire pattern of relating is built on managing closeness and distance. When you stop contacting them, their usual escape route becomes irrelevant. They have nothing to run from because there is no pressure coming toward them. But instead of feeling freedom, they encounter a tension they are unfamiliar with, the tension of introspection. The silence you both fall into acts like a vacuum that pulls suppressed emotions to the surface. The avoidant, who relies on avoiding emotional intensity, now feels intensity emerging from within rather than from you. Their mind may wander to thoughts they never allowed themselves to entertain before. Did they push too far? Did they withdraw too quickly? Did they misinterpret your intentions? Did they overlook something meaningful? The tension they feel is not one of fear of being overwhelmed by you, but fear of being overwhelmed by their own internal reality. This psychological tension between two people in silence forms a kind of energetic cord. Even when no words are exchanged, the mind keeps interacting with the absence. Absence becomes a presence of its own. The more each of you resists reaching out, the more intense this invisible connection becomes. You may feel sudden waves of emotion out of nowhere. They may feel the impulse to check your social media, reread old messages, or think about things they had brushed aside. The psyche is responding to the void, and voids are never empty. They are filled with the echoes of everything left unresolved. Silence is powerful because it removes illusion. Without contact, the truth of your attachment, your fears, your patterns, and your desires rises from the unconscious. You become aware of what you actually need instead of what you hoped the relationship would give you. The avoidant becomes aware of emotions they spent a lifetime suppressing. Both psyches, in their own ways, are pulled into a depth they did not voluntarily choose. This mutual, unspoken tension becomes the crucible where inner transformation quietly begins and nothing remains the same afterward. When silence settles between you and the avoidant, something far deeper begins to move beneath the surface. Something that has nothing to do with the last conversation or the reasons you both withdrew. What awakens is the shadow, the part of the psyche that holds everything you've rejected, denied, minimized, or projected onto the other person. When communication was flowing, even if it was inconsistent or painful, both of you had somewhere to place your discomfort. You could blame their distance, their coldness, their unpredictability. They could blame your sensitivity, your intensity, or your longing. But when both of you stop contacting, the psyche is deprived of its usual outlets. With no one to accuse, no one to chase, and no one to run from, the unconscious begins to reveal what has been hiding all along. For you, the shadow might emerge as the sudden realization that your need for closeness was not only about love, but also about fear. The fear of being abandoned, overlooked, or unchosen. The silence exposes whether your connection to them was rooted in genuine compatibility or in the deeper desire to heal old wounds through them. The moments where you swallowed your needs, rationalized their distance, or convinced yourself that emotional breadcrumbs were enough begin to reappear in your mind, not to torment you, but to bring clarity. The shadow forces you to confront your patterns. It shows you the places where you lost yourself, the moments when you felt invisible but stayed anyway, and the stories you created to justify their lack of emotional availability. These realizations do not arise gently. They come through sudden memories, unexpected emotions, or the powerful urge to analyze what went wrong. But beneath all of it lies the truth the shadow wants you to see. That some part of you believed you did not deserve more than what you were receiving. For the avoidant, the shadow emerges in a different form. Their entire attachment system is built around minimizing emotions, rejecting vulnerability, and maintaining independence at all costs. But when communication stops from both sides, their shadow rises through discomfort, agitation, and confusion. They are used to being pursued, needed, or relied upon. It confirms their internal belief that they can keep distance without truly losing connection. But when you step back, when you stop contacting altogether, the dynamic shifts. They begin to sense something unfamiliar within themselves, a feeling that resembles regret, curiosity, or even longing. They may not name it or acknowledge it consciously, but the shadow pushes these sensations into their awareness through subtle thoughts like wondering why you disappeared, replaying old interactions, or feeling unexpectedly affected by your absence. The shadow for the avoidant contains all the emotions they've suppressed for years: fear of abandonment that they mask with aloofness, desire for intimacy that they bury under independence, sensitivity that they hide beneath detachment. Silence activates these internal contradictions. Without the chance to blame your pursuit for their discomfort, they are confronted with the truth that some part of them did care, did feel, and did want connection, but they suffocated those emotions to stay safe. The shadow begins whispering to them through memories of your warmth, your presence, your understanding, the calm you brought, or the way you made them feel seen without demanding more than they could give. These memories start slipping through their defenses because the silence leaves too much space for reflection. For both of you, the shadow's emergence is uncomfortable, sometimes painful, often confusing, but it is purposeful. When communication stops, the illusion of who the other person was fades, and the truth of who you both are becomes unavoidable. You begin seeing that you weren't just reacting to their behavior was reacting to wounds you carried long before they entered your life. The avoidant begins realizing that their distance wasn't just about needing space. It was a shield against their own vulnerability that they never learned to hold with compassion. Silence becomes the stage where these hidden parts rise from the unconscious and demand recognition. The parts of yourself you pushed away start asking to be acknowledged. The parts of them they refuse to admit become harder for them to ignore. And without the noise of the relationship distracting both of you, the shadow finally steps into the light, revealing truths that neither of you were ready to see when words were still flowing between you. When both of you fall into silence, something unexpected begins to unfold inside the avoidant, something they never planned for and are rarely prepared to handle. While they may appear calm, detached, or unfazed on the outside, their inner world starts experiencing a subtle unraveling. The absence of contact creates a psychological shift for them, because their usual pattern depends on one thing: you reaching out. As long as you were the one initiating, they could comfortably maintain emotional distance without losing the connection entirely. Your presence acted as a buffer, allowing them to avoid the discomfort of self-reflection. But when your energy disappears, when your messages stop, the avoidant is left in a space they carefully crafted yet never intended to sit in alone. Their inner conflict begins with confusion. Avoidants rely on a certain predictable rhythm. Someone moves toward them, and they instinctively move back to maintain safety. But now, there is no movement to respond to. Without the familiar pressure to retreat from, their system doesn't know what to do. The protective shield they built is still there, but it no longer serves a function. This is when the deeper layers of their emotional world begin to stir. The silence makes them aware of emotions they've suppressed for years: longing, curiosity, grief, or even a sense of loss they don't want to name. These emotions challenge their internal narrative that they are better off alone, safer without intimacy, or unaffected by emotional distance. As days pass, the avoidant starts feeling the weight of the absence in unexpected ways. They may notice they think about you more than they admit. They recall conversations, moments of closeness, or parts of your personality that stood out to them, not because they're sentimental by nature, but because the silence has removed distraction. Without the constant need to self-protect, the avoidant's mind becomes more porous, allowing memories and feelings to surface that they once pushed down. The emotional distance they insisted on no longer protects them from the impact of losing someone who once gave them warmth, consistency, and care. This inner conflict deepens as they begin questioning their own behavior. For perhaps the first time, they ask themselves whether they pulled back too quickly, whether they misinterpreted your intentions, whether they dismissed something meaningful, or whether they acted out of fear rather than clarity. Avoidants rarely experience regret in the moment, but silence creates the space for regret to take shape. They start seeing the moments they shut down, the opportunities they let pass, the tenderness they resisted, and the ways they avoided letting themselves feel anything vulnerable. This realization is uncomfortable, even destabilizing, because it contradicts the belief system that has kept them emotionally safe for so long. The conflict becomes an internal tug-of-war. One part of them wants to maintain the distance, believing it's the only way to stay protected. Another part, quieter but growing, wonders what it means that your absence doesn't feel as peaceful as they imagined. They begin sensing a void where your presence used to live. An inner restlessness starts creeping in, a sense that something is missing. But they don't rush to act on it. Avoidants rarely move quickly, especially when emotions are involved. Instead, they sit in the discomfort, sometimes without even realizing that the discomfort is directly tied to the silence between you. This internal tension is the beginning of their awakening, but they will never admit it openly. To them, vulnerability is unfamiliar territory, yet the silence forces them to confront themselves. And in that confrontation, they begin realizing that the distance they once created so confidently no longer feels like freedom, but something closer to loneliness, something closer to loss, something closer to the truth they've spent their whole life trying not to feel. When two people who once shared emotional chemistry suddenly fall silent, the connection between them doesn't merely fade, it changes form. Silence does not weaken the energetic cord, it intensifies it. What most people don't realize is that the absence of words makes the unconscious communication between two individuals stronger, not weaker. The space between you becomes charged with everything unsaid, unresolved, and unexpressed. Where spoken communication once diluted the emotional field, silence now condenses it, making every memory, every feeling, and every psychological imprint more vivid. The connection stops being external and becomes internal, and in that internal space, emotions grow louder, not quieter. When there's no contact, the mind searches for coherence. It searches for meaning. You may find yourself revisiting conversations, replaying moments, or feeling emotions that seem to arrive out of nowhere. This is not merely nostalgia. It is your psyche responding to the chord that still exists. The emotional energy that once moved between you through messages, calls, and interactions now turns inward. Without a channel to travel outward, it circulates through your internal landscape. That's why silence often feels heavier than words. It makes you feel everything at once. It brings suppressed doubts to the surface and highlights the parts of the connection you didn't fully understand while it was alive. You notice the subtle ways they affected you, the emotional patterns you fell into without awareness, and the depth of the attachment that existed beneath the surface. For the avoidant, this energetic amplification happens differently but just as powerfully. They are used to navigating relationships through distance, creating space to maintain emotional control. As long as you were reaching out, the energetic flow was predictable. They could keep you at arm's length. But when your energy retracts, when your steady presence disappears, something disorienting happens. The cord between you doesn't dissolve. It shifts direction. Instead of energy moving toward them, it pulls away, and this creates an energetic vacuum. Avoidants do not respond well to vacuums. They are comfortable when they can regulate closeness, not when closeness disappears altogether. The silence becomes a mirror they cannot escape. Suddenly, the emotions they avoided start echoing inside the very space they created. They may feel sudden urges to check on you, search for traces of your presence, or wonder why they feel unsettled without understanding the source. This is the energetic cord pulling at them in a way they cannot logically explain. The amplification of the connection in silence is not mystical, it is psychological. When communication ends, projection collapses. You can no longer project hopes, fears, or fantasies onto their words because there are no words. Instead, your mind projects onto the emptiness itself, and emptiness amplifies whatever unresolved emotions exist. If you longed for closeness, that longing intensifies. If they feared intimacy, that fear becomes more noticeable when you are no longer there to trigger it. Silence forces both of you to sit with your rawest emotional truth without distraction. It magnifies the emotional charge between you because the psyche was never meant to hold unresolved tension without release. In the absence of expression, the energy grows instead of fading. This is why mutual silence often feels like a bond being stretched rather than broken. You might sense them thinking about you without knowing why. They may feel your withdrawal as a sudden shift in the emotional atmosphere around them. Both of you, consciously or unconsciously, become more aware of each other's absence than you ever were of each other's presence. It is similar to how a room feels louder when a sound stops abruptly. The silence becomes a presence of its own, dense and meaningful. And because this energetic cord remains active, both you and the avoidant are pushed into deeper reflection. You begin to see what the connection truly meant to you. They begin to feel the weight of what they lost or pushed away. The dynamic becomes sharper, more defined, because the noise has been removed, leaving only the essence. That essence does not weaken in silence. It intensifies. It forces truth to surface. It forces clarity. It forces recognition of what was real, what was imagined, and what was emotionally unresolved. This is why silence can feel shocking, because instead of ending the connection, it magnifies it. It exposes what words once concealed and reveals what both of you were too distracted to see when communication still flowed. When two people fall into silence after a long period of emotional tension, something remarkable begins to happen beneath the surface. The absence of contact becomes more than just a pause. It becomes a psychological threshold. This threshold marks the moment when the connection stops being driven by reaction and starts being shaped by awareness. The silence pushes both individuals toward an inner crossroads where they must either evolve or remain trapped in the old pattern. This is where the true turning point emerges, one that neither expected and neither can fully control. It is not about who reaches out first or who breaks the silence. It's about the transformation that takes place internally while nothing is being said. For you, this turning point begins with a subtle shift in perspective. The longer the silence continues, the more you start seeing the relationship not from a place of emotional urgency, but from a place of clarity. The fog that once clouded your judgment begins to lift. You no longer romanticize their distance or interpret their withdrawal as something you must fix. Instead, you begin recognizing your own worth outside of the connection. You notice how much emotional labor you were carrying, how much reassurance you were giving, how much hope you were investing in moments that, in hindsight, were fragments rather than foundations. This new awareness doesn't arrive suddenly, it builds slowly. One day you realize that the ache is lighter, the longing is less consuming, and your mind is not orbiting them the way it once did. Silence becomes the space where your identity starts returning to you, piece by piece, and this shift is the beginning of your transformation. As the silence deepens, you start reconnecting with your intuition. You sense that the relationship was trying to teach you something, not about them, but about yourself, about the wounds you carry, the fears you project, the patterns you repeat. You realize that the person you were when the connection began is not the person you are becoming now. You begin reclaiming your emotional sovereignty. You stop waiting for validation. You stop interpreting their silence as rejection. Instead, you begin seeing the situation as a mirror reflecting your deepest needs. This moment becomes a turning point because you finally step into your own center, no longer anchored to their inconsistency or avoidance. You begin moving from emotional dependence to self-awareness, from longing to alignment, from attachment to understanding. For the avoidant, the turning point emerges in a different but equally powerful way. The absence of contact creates an inner disruption they did not anticipate. They are accustomed to relationships where they maintain distance, control the pace, and dictate the emotional tone. But when both sides go silent, they lose the sense of control they usually rely on. They begin feeling a shift inside themselves that is unfamiliar and unsettling. The quiet forces them to confront truths they have avoided for years, truths about intimacy, about vulnerability, about the ways they push people away, not because they don't care, but because caring scares them. These realizations don't surface as clear thoughts. They appear as a feeling of unease, a sense that something important is slipping away, or a subtle emotional pull toward what they once dismissed. This internal discomfort marks the beginning of their transformation. They start questioning the rigid defenses they built. They wonder why your absence feels heavier than your presence ever did. They sense that the emotional distance they maintained is no longer protecting them, but isolating them from something meaningful. This slow unraveling of their emotional walls is their turning point, the moment when their avoidance no longer feels like strength, but a barrier that costs them connection. They may not take action immediately, and they may not reach out right away, but the seeds of change begin taking root in their psyche. They start becoming more aware of the impact of their own patterns, even if they can't yet articulate it. The most surprising part is how these two inner transformations, yours and theirs, happen simultaneously yet independently. The silence becomes the catalyst that pushes you towards self-growth and them towards self-confrontation. You rise into clarity while they fall into introspection. Your detachment becomes spiritual, emotional, and grounded. Their detachment becomes uncomfortable, reflective, and uncertain. In this unexpected shift, the dynamic between you begins to change in ways neither of you could have predicted. This is the moment when everything turns, not because someone reaches out, but because both of you evolve in the space where nothing is said. The connection becomes clearer, the roles become visible, and the truth becomes undeniable. Silence reshapes both of you, and what happens next is never the same as what came before. The silence between you and the avoidant was never just an ending, it was a passageway. It forced both of you out of the repetitive dance of pursuit and withdrawal and into the deeper landscape of your own inner world. In that space where no words were exchanged, everything that had been buried beneath patterns, fears, and defenses finally had room to rise. You were confronted with your longing, your unmet needs, your forgotten strength. They were confronted with their vulnerability, their suppressed emotions, and the truth they've run from for most of their life. And through this quiet, parallel journey, something irreversible happened. You both changed. You discovered clarity. Clarity about what you deserve, what you want, and what you will no longer tolerate. You started to see yourself not as someone waiting to be chosen, but as someone rediscovering their own worth. You began returning to your center, recognizing that love should not require your abandonment of self. The avoidant, in their silence, encountered something equally transformative. Without your presence stabilizing the connection, they were left to face themselves. They felt the emptiness not as freedom, but as consequence. They realized that emotional distance does not protect them from loss, it creates it. This mutual awakening is the unexpected gift of silence. It breaks illusions, reveals truth, and creates a shift that cannot be undone. Whether the connection revives or remains in the past, the two people who entered the silence are not the same as the ones who emerge from it. The turning point wasn't in the final message or the last argument. It happened in the quiet, where inner transformation took root. And that transformation will shape every connection you choose from this moment forward.